Welcome to Wavemakers, the podcast where we dive into the stories of bold thinkers, trailblazers, and innovators who are making waves in their communities, industries, and beyond. Together, we'll explore the ideas, challenges, and victories of people who are shaping the future. At Wavemakers, we bring you thought-provoking conversations with those who are pushing the boundaries, defying expectations, and creating impact in their own unique ways. While we're proudly produced by Rio Salado College, a place that values lifelong learning and community impact, this podcast isn't just about education. It's about real-world stories of passion, perseverance, and progress. So, if you're ready to dive deep into the big ideas and get inspired by those who are making waves, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Welcome to Wavemakers, the podcast from Rio Salado College, where we spotlight the people and ideas shaping the future of education, workforce, and our community. Today's episode comes following a special event this morning at Rio Salado, co-hosted by the Tempe Chamber of Commerce on housing affordability, construction innovation, and workforce development in Arizona. After the panel, we are sitting down with two of our panelists to continue the conversation about how new technologies and new talent could help us address one of the region's biggest challenges. So I am going to invite our two guests to introduce themselves. Ken, go right ahead.
Hey, my name is Ken Wilk. I am the Applied Technology Chair at Rio, and essentially what that means is I oversee our construction training programs, engineering, and things within the vein of that, like robotics and things of that nature. One of the things we're really excited about is the idea around what you've just introduced, Michelle, our construction additive manufacturing, and where the president has really provided us with a bold vision to try to look at how we can do more with additive manufacturing as it relates to construction.
And to keep that going, we're going to invite Zach to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Hi there. I'm Zach Mannheimer. I'm the founder and chairman of Alquist 3D. We are a 3D printing construction company, technology company based in Greeley, Colorado. Really what that boils down to is we use giant robots to print houses and other structures. And the biggest piece of this industry that is often overlooked and what we're here to talk about today is the opportunities for workforce development.
Excellent. You know, today's panel really focused on housing affordability and the construction innovation. Zach, what stood out to you about the conversation?
First of all, the willingness and desire to explore new technologies in this region. Not everywhere in the country or the world is as open to new ideas and innovation, unfortunately. So Tempe and the Phoenix Metro in general seems to be a great place to grow this opportunity and experiment and get some real practical projects. So that was first and foremost. And then beyond that, a lot of the structure for the ecosystem we've already created. The education program, obviously, with Ken, and through the program that we're going to be doing at Rio, but also the practical piece of having real construction firms, general contractors, developers involved in the discussion today was a big deal because we want this to be practical. And then finally, having the mayor be on the panel and expressed a desire that, hey, we need to do this here for a variety of reasons. So a lot of the pieces of the puzzle are already represented.
Ken, what about you? What stood out during the conversation?
I was just so excited to be a part of it. I think Arizona for a long time has been one of the leaders in the nation for growth and construction activity. And I think with Zach coming here and some of his innovative ideas and having leaders from Sunt and other construction companies like Hensel Phelps in the room, they're some of the biggest contractors in the nation, and some of the exciting projects that they're doing, and just kind of seeing the way Zach's ideas dovetail into this bold vision that I think he and President Smith have created around potentially a decade from now. What does construction look like? What does the industry look like? Are there going to be automated robots? And that idea can sometimes be a little overwhelming, but I think it's exciting too, because when you really look into the numbers of construction, just in this state alone, I believe we need about 200,000 workers in the foreseeable future. So even if the robots and all this exciting technology replaced 90% of jobs, we'd still need thousands of jobs. So it's an exciting time to discuss these topics.
You know, that's a really good way of looking at it. And it is scary. And I think Eric from Sunt started off the conversation by saying, you know, any movie that starts off with rows of homes that look the same and everybody looks the same and robots are there, those movies don't end well. And there's this fear of this technology, of any technology, but specifically of 3D robots coming in and taking people's jobs away. But the reality is this 200,000 is a substantial number. I mean, that's an entire city. We need that many workers, and that plays to the labor shortage, which is why we find ourselves in this housing predicament to begin with. So it all snowballs and dovetails well. And the best part about this is that this technology is actually going to create far more jobs than might be lost during that process.
You've both brought up a great topic that I'm just going to segue into. For the listeners who are unaware or who maybe didn't attend this morning's panel.
Shame on them.
I know. Yeah, it was really a great conversation. Zach, can you tell us, 3D Alquist, what are you doing? People hear 3D printing. What does that mean?
It's a great question. Most people have no idea what that is. And it's because the name of 3D printing doesn't elicit unfortunately, a 3D object of a house size. So what we're doing, we started the company at the end of 2020 specifically to address the housing shortage. And we didn't know that the way to get there was actually going to be through the commercial sector. And that was largely because the cost of material for this was so high because there weren't many projects. In America, there are fewer than 400 3D concrete printed structures currently. In the world, there might be 1,000. There aren't many. And so because of that, the material cost is high because we're having trouble scaling it. So going the commercial route, we were fortunate to get a LinkedIn message from the construction innovation director at Walmart. Of all places, we didn't think that this would happen. We competed, we won that project, and then Walmart, what they wanted us to print were called online pickup and delivery centers, OPDs. And these are structures that vary between 5,000 and 10,000 square feet that are typically 20 feet tall that connect to a Walmart supercenter for folks that are buying stuff online to come and claim their goods. Nobody at the time had ever printed anything of that magnitude in the commercial sector. So it was very daunting. And on top of that, Walmart, in their fun way, wanted to test us without telling us that that's what they were doing. So we did 3 pilot projects. One in Tennessee, one in Alabama, one in southern Missouri. The first one was in a seismic 4 zone, incredibly challenging. The second was done during the dead of winter in the snow. The third was done with 50-mile-per-hour winds. And we were successful on all 3. We definitely had challenges and concerns on all of them, but we got it done. And it was the first structure took much longer to do because we were acclimating. The second one, though, was done in 7 days, and that was a complete record. We were able to show true cost savings to Walmart just on the second one. And then just for fun, they threw in a third one to test us, and we surpassed that. And so now they're scaling us, and we have over 12 more projects with them, and we're growing in size. The reason why I mention this is because now we're buying millions of pounds of material, which means the cost for material can come down. That was not the only factor, but one of the biggest levers to pull on to make housing more affordable using this technology.
Now that you're able to build upon what you've done and perhaps enter the housing market a little bit more, you talked a little bit about the people. Talk to me, Ken and Zach, a little bit about how this is going to come together here at Rio very shortly.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, that is an exciting topic. And this is one where I think I've really tried to lean into a vision that Zach has provided. And I was trying to wrap my head around this idea because we've used the term printer. And really printing to me is something I imagine, some process in the 1800s where people are around newspaper reels. And it really is a robotics and manufacturing program. So You're thinking about robotics, computer-aided design, efficiency in manufacturing. So what we're really focusing on is those skills that Zach highlighted. along with the numerous challenges that he so articulately laid out about local variability in temperature, climates, conditions in which these projects are going to occur. But really thinking about at Rio, what can we do for workforce training and how does that happen to be implemented here for the college and what that vision means that our President Smith has kind of set out for us. And that's looking at things like the skills, computer-aided design skills. What CAD programs and software packages do students need to know, and the math skills related to that, and the communication skills around that? What skills in terms of safety and industry awareness? Zach's brought up so many fantastic materials as I've had discussions with him. Right now, we're mostly focusing on concretes and plastics. Those are kind of the biggest ones where I'm seeing the most technology gains in usage of the material. So what is the safety and what do the material sciences around those look like, and adding some of those skills so students are familiar with it. As Zach was pointing out, building a Walmart in snow or freezing conditions. Concrete is an endothermic reaction process in chemistry where it has to physically have a chemical reaction to harden. So you have to control water and temperature variables in those scenarios. Same thing, with some of the plastic processes. As you print those, you have to look at things like, is the material going to absorb water and how does it affect? So water is a big factor in both of these processes.
Huge factor.
Understanding that. And then just the skills around, the safety, the mixed designs, handling that, and the workforce skills. So that's what we're really focusing on at Rio. And the exciting part about that is we're hoping to have 2 workforce classes available here in the fall to really look at how we get into that. And as Zach has kind of pointed out, around 100 to 160 hours of training is what is a model that he and Ames Community College has developed in Colorado to get people proficient in those skills. So we're trying to stay in that vein of how do we quickly get a workforce and people able to be adapted to this industry.
One thing you talked about this morning, Zach, that I really appreciated, Ken pointed out all the different skills this workforce is going to need that we're hoping to train them in this new program. What does it look like when they get out? And what I really want you to talk about is, yes, they're building the frame or the structure of the house, but this does not mean we don't need other workers. So let's talk about both what students coming out of Ken's program will do, but then what other workforce people you're going to need to continue building these houses.
Well, absolutely. And what's underlying a lot of this, too, that we need to pay attention to is that it's not just that these are the jobs of tomorrow and that's exciting, but how this is a job that a young person wants, that gets them excited about, where if you watch the trends, speaking of the other trades, the trends of those trades over the past 50 years, they've gone down. Our welders, our plumbers, our electricians, et cetera. Even though these are very high-paying positions in growing industries, they're not exciting to young people, especially when it comes to straight-up construction, masonry, or framing. These are dirty jobs. These are, in some cases, not very safe. They're not healthy. So young people are not moving that direction. Using this technology, we remove a great chunk of that. You don't have to put up scaffolding for folks to be on to put together the exterior walls. You're not being exposed to tons of harmful materials. You're not lifting and carrying incredibly heavy objects. So all of that is attractive. But in terms of the actual jobs, what they will do, the direct jobs that'll come through Ken's program will be folks learning how to code, how to do the design that the robot is then printing out. They'll be the ones that the robotic operators that are running the printers itself. They'll be the folks at the mix plant who are learning and that's typically the most challenging job on the job site, is figuring out the exact ratio of water to material based upon humidity and the temperature, which is in many cases always in flux. So those are the positions that they'll have within the company and others. But then there's the indirect jobs that you were alluding to, that if we are going to have an uptick in construction for more houses and more structures, inevitably that's going to mean we need more electricians, more plumbers, more carpenters, et cetera. So those trades are going to grow as well. And we need to track that. And it's not just a this versus this, it's all boats rise together. We have to focus on that.
How do we get young people or even those already in the industry to think about reskilling or picking up these skills that maybe they didn't consider in the past?
We've had a great amount of students. Our first course that we offer currently through Ames in Colorado is an online course, and it's basically a 3D concrete printing 101. Gives you the history of the industry. It talks about the robots, the materials, how coding basically works, and you're not getting your hands dirty. It's all online. It's self-guided. So we've had well over 200 students go through that program in the last year and a half. There is not really an average age, but we've had many folks in their 40s, 50s, and 60s take this course to reskill. Many of these people have been in the construction trades for most of their lives. Their knees hurt, their back hurts. They don't want to keep up with that. They can't keep up with that type, but they still obviously want to be gainfully employed, and they want to do something that's exciting. This is the answer.
This is an exciting time for this field and education. When they come together and looking over the next year, how do you see technologies as 3D printing or maybe beyond solving some of these housing problems over the next decade?
The main way, the silver bullet is this is cheaper than stick-built construction. So now, the industry is not there yet today. We thought we were several years ago. There were many claims that we were, but the bottom line is that we were not, and the reasons why, there's 3 points. And we talked about one, which was the cost of material. The other, which is one that Rio and Ken's world is going to help us solve, along with other schools around the country, is the labor shortage. We need more people that have this training instead of doing that training on the job site, which is takes a lot of time and expensive. So we'll have students that have this training come right out of school here at Rio and can be gainfully employed. The third piece is scale. And most 3D printed projects by companies in America have been one-offs. One home here, 2 homes there, etc. And when you're acclimating to a new climate, and you have new employees learning how to use this technology, it is inevitable that first and second home are probably going to take more time. There's going to be more mistakes and more cleanup, and that's going to equal it being more expensive than a traditional stick-built world. A good way to think about it is we have been building Ford F-150s forever, and we know how to do it, and we can keep cranking them out. Now we're trying to build a Ford F-150 that can fly. The first few there's going to be some bugs to work out, some problems to have, and it'll take us longer. But once we perfect it, that's when this is going to scale. And I believe that we are within a 24-month window where that will be perfected. We need more schools like Rio to start teaching this. And I think in the next 5 years, you're going to see this industry explode.
You hit the nail on the head in talking about partnerships. And Ken, I want you to talk about a little bit what we're doing with 3D Alquist, but also what other partnerships need to come together to solve this problem.
There are so many fantastic opportunities to partner here on so many levels and in different ways. And as Zach has pointed out, one of those is the industry partnership where you have the robotics company supplying the printer. One thing I don't know that Zach has really highlighted enough in this conversation or we've talked about, but partnerships with material suppliers. One of the good things about concrete, and there's other things we can talk about where they're not so good, but one of the things I really love about concrete and masonry products, especially being an Arizonan, is we have fantastic resources for aggregates and the materials that you actually put into concrete. So you can really locally utilize resources to then build the project. And Zach earlier today was talking about, potentially even using the material in your backyard. But that concept of we're not bringing lumber in from different places. We're utilizing local materials. That's exciting to me, those partnerships of how you partner with those suppliers and what they look like. So we're working on that. Partnerships with the local areas. Tempe Unified High School District has been one of our phenomenal dual enrollment partners. And dual enrollment means that they partner with us to provide college training classes to their high school students. And so when we look at our local partners, what does partnering with our community look like in terms of engaging with community-based projects? Today, after the event where we talked with Mayor Woods and Eric and Zach, I had some fantastic people come up to me and talk about ADA requirements and peoples with alternative needs and how do we look at using this technology to make them more enabled in society. So there's so many opportunities here to really engage as a community. And that's where I'd really just want to highlight kind of President Kate's vision of what that looks like here locally in Tempe and engaging the city of Tempe and all of those fantastics. You know, Janelle Elias, our VP of Strategic Partnerships, would call it the ecosystem. So what does our ecosystem look like here specifically in the Arizona, but more locally in the Tempe area look like?
I mean, Kate was instrumental in this vision, and not just having a vision, but actually implementing it, which is rare in these days. And the other pieces, it is those pieces of the puzzle that Ken was mentioning. A few other pieces of the ecosystem. You've got the municipality. You need the city to play ball, and not just on terms of zoning and permitting and all that and code compliance, and that's a given. Outside of that, how can they help disrupt in a good way to be a catalyst for this type of technology? Can they partner with us to do some beta projects that prove this out to the community so people understand what it is before other developers take the risk to jump in? And that's the last piece of the ecosystem, is actual construction companies that are based here in Tempe and elsewhere that want to do use this type of technology. They have to jump in. And they've been skeptical because we haven't seen a proliferation of this industry across the country yet. And that hasn't happened for the reasons we've been saying, plus the major capital investment that's needed on the outset. Those costs are coming down. These robots cost a fraction of the price that they used to 5 years ago.
All right. So leading with that, 5 years from now, what do you hope to see changed in how housing is built here in Arizona?
Well, first of all, I'll be parking my flying F-150 into my floating garage.
Floating garage.
That's right. That's right. The 5 years from now, my expectation and my hope is that you see one of these pieces of technologies, one of these robots that'll probably look very different than they do today. There'll be at least one on every single job site, regardless of whether that's residential or commercial or infrastructure, complementing the humans who are on the job site in one way or another. That doesn't mean that this technology is going to print everything and build everything. There are components of structures that make a lot of sense to be 3D printed with concrete and other materials. There are other pieces that make zero sense to use this type of technology. So I think you're going to see this on every job site. And then, you know, Ken and I both have young kids, and we've talked about this before. Our kids are growing up learning how to code. They're learning how to use this technology. This will be normal to them by the time that they get to be our ripe old age.
I wanted to just add something to that point because I don't know that I addressed it earlier, Michelle, with your questions, but my 8-year-old recently took a 3D printing class, and I was kind of like, you know, I paid the fees for him to take that class, and I was kind of curious because I'm like, I'm trying to do this too. How am I going to implement it? But they used pens and plastic technology, so they're 3D printing, you know, in the elementary schools. And 3D printers are almost like the currency of 8-year-olds now. I've printed this project and that. So I think my hope or you know, I think Zach has an incredibly bold vision and it's exciting. And if you lean into it, it's like, wow, you know, get a 3D printer, see what it can do. It's phenomenal. Whatever system you use, whether it's thermoplastics, metals, you know, concrete, they're all fantastic. But one of my bold visions is, as we've talked about today, one of the biggest challenges we've faced with affordability is the labor aspect. How do we get the labor prices down? How do we get more labor availability? So with the 3D printers, one of my hopes with this is in 5 years, it generates a lot of excitement to get more participation from our younger people that are seeing these skills. And maybe we don't have 100,000 jobs where we need concrete 3D printers or additive manufacturers in the industry, but maybe there's offshoots of where they're now engaged in construction industry jobs and we're placing them in positions where we desperately need some workers in our workforce. Again, thinking back just to the state, hundreds of thousands of workers. Nationally, it's millions. I would love to see that problem solved. And I know the construction industry has been placing so many efforts around marketing and solving just that skills gap need.
Absolutely. And if I can share one other vision with where this could be. Let's just take a house, say a 1,200 square foot, single story, 3-bed, 2-bath, slab on grade home, if you will. Every single element in that home can and should be printed. out of completely different materials. You can print the house. Ideally, the house will be printed in a carbon negative material, perhaps a hempcrete or something else like that adjacent that is made from locally sourced materials, and we're dropping our carbon footprint dramatically, and we're lowering our heating and cooling costs and our energy use across the board. The staircase is, if there is one in this single-story home, which of course there's single-story, so there wouldn't be. So let's say two-story. The staircase can be printed out of concrete or other materials. Your hinges, your drawer pulls, your sink faucets. Today, those are printed. Those are printed in polymer, and they're covered in a metal sheathing. That's already happening. That's going to take the next step, and you're going to be in a process where, so my wife and I are remodeling our kitchen right now. So we're choosing all sorts of new sink faucets and doorknobs and all these things. And every time we go to Lowe's to choose them, I always turn to her and I say, we could just print this. And she's getting real tired of hearing that. But the point is that all of these things can be printed and are already printed. A person 5 years from now will be able to get these products in 3 different ways. They can pay a premium by buying it from a hardware store where it's already been printed for them. They can go to that store and print it at the store. Or the best way would be to buy a design online or design it themselves and print it themselves in their own home. That's going to become another massive economic surge for this. And it doesn't stop there. It's printing the clothing that's hanging on the rack. It's printing the food that is in your fridge. All of that can be printed and is being printed today. I mean, the industry that we don't even talk about is we're 3D printing human organs. If we can 3D print human organs, we can definitely 3D print a sweater.
This is mind-boggling. I feel like I'm in a Star Trek episode in some ways.
In some ways you are.
You did have me turn off my tricorder before I walked in the room and put it on airplane.
Thank you so much for doing that. We didn't want to scare anybody. So for those listeners interested in the construction careers or housing innovation, let's finish with this. What excites you the most about the future? So, Ken?
Wow, that's something I've been thinking about a lot, really pondering on. And it's excitement and apprehension because you see this technology and you see what it can do. And just in the last few months, kind of getting more into 3D printing and exploring that technology. As Zach had mentioned, literally my son and I the other day were working on a science project trying to print a computer bracket to fit a solid state hard drive in his computer on his older computer. So, I mean, the ability to then, we didn't have to go to a computer store. We're able to do that. Yeah, make the part. So there's that. And just integrating with that technology, solving some of those broader problems, access to housing equity, engaging young people in careers they're exciting about. To me, I really hope those positives shine through this process.
I completely agree. And I would add 2 things to that, or really just take what you're saying further. The American dream is home ownership. That's how it was sold to us. That is true. And really the only way at the moment to accumulate wealth in our country, the way that our system is set up, is by buying and owning a home and letting that accumulate and using those dollars moving forward. That is next to impossible for well over half the population today. So we have to solve that first and foremost. So you mentioned home equity. I completely agree. That is one of my hopes for the future that this technology is going to help with. It's not a silver bullet, but it is one tool that we'll be able to use. The other is how this is really combining both sides of our brain in one. And you just described it with your son printing out that part. He has to be creative enough to design the part, and then he has to do something practical in actually printing it out and using it in this case, a computer. This is a creative world that we've always been in, but we've been told for most of our lives that the creative sector is not, where you go for jobs. It's highly tough to get into. It's like trying to become a professional athlete. It's not likely that you're going to do that. So please don't go to school and be a theater major like I was. Instead, become a computer science major. That's what we've been told. This is all changing now. It's being turned on its head. How creative can we be? But how do we marry that with something that is really tangible and practical, which is 3D printing?
This really is an intersection of creativity, of industry, of community. And this is such an exciting topic. I really want to thank you both for being here and talking to us about this at Wavemakers. For anyone who wants to learn a little bit more, please check out our website at riosalado.edu. Thank you both for taking the time to be with us today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was an honor.